Good evening, everyone. Jay Strang, Chief School Business Official. 5 years ago, the Board of Education was concerned about the demographics of the school district and the changing enrollment, and they asked us to go out for RFP, a request for proposals, to find a demographer to kind of see what was going on with our district. And RSP and Associates was the firm that we selected, and they came in and did a study. The study was incredibly accurate. It was a 5-year study. They were off by 1% to 2.5%, depending upon the grade level and the school level. And we found that the study was very good for our planning. So with that 5-year study ending and the recession kind of taking over, we thought, there's some changes we're seeing in our enrollments and our demography across the district again, so let's contact RSP and Associates and have them come back out for another study. They're familiar with our district and with our community, and they came back out and completed that study again this year. So tonight we're going to show you a little history of the district and then some of the trends that are going on in the district that we hope that you find is helpful. For many of you that have been in the district for a long time, you may know that we were at one point the fastest growing school district in the state of Illinois, and we were competing to be the fastest growing school district in the nation at one point in time. When you look at it through the decades, you can see that in 1972 to 1979, we had 7 schools total. And from 1980 to 1989, we went to 12. And from 1990 to 1999, we went to 25. And from 2000 to 2009, we went to the 33 schools that we currently have now. Those 33 schools include our middle schools, our elementary schools, our high schools, our alternative high school, which is Indian Plains, and the Wheatland facility. So 2 of those buildings are original buildings to the school district when it was formed back in the 70s. They're very old buildings. Our enrollment was growing incredibly fast. We became very successful and skilled at opening new schools. In the 1990s, I believe it was 1999, we opened 3 schools and had 4 major additions to schools. So we were very good at transitioning staff, welcoming families, moving families from one school to another as the buildings continued to grow. Our emphasis was always to work with the cities to decide where that next set of schools was going to go so that we could build that elementary school or build that middle school where that new growth was going to be. So that was a paradigm that we became very successful at. What happened right around the time of the recession is we started to flatten off with our enrollment, and then it started to decline, which was a new trend for us. And that was something that we've not seen before as a school district. What you can see with the red is that the next 5 years, that decline is going to continue, and we're expecting to lose another 1,400 students over the course of the next 5 years. All of our elementary schools are not the same size. There's different capacities because we've had additions to many of them. Many of them were older designs, and as we got better at building those schools, we added some nuances to them that made them larger. The other thing is that we really work to save taxpayer dollars, and that's why when you go into any one of our schools, you see that the building designs are very similar. We bought the architectural plan, so we weren't engaging architects for every one of our schools. That's why when you walk into School A or School B or School C, they look very similar. What you can see from this, what our current enrollment is and what our architectural's optimal capacity is. The light blue is our current enrollment. The dark gray is the architect's optimal capacity. Now, the architect's optimal capacity is about 90% because every student isn't exactly the same. Some students need particular programming that requires them to be in smaller settings or to be in smaller classes or in larger classes in some cases. In addition to that, sections aren't always perfect. You don't always have 27 students to a section. You might have odd numbers, and you might have 5 sections of 5th grade and 3 sections of 4th grade. So you really can't look at 100% capacity. It's very difficult to schedule like that. But what you can see with this is that from north to south, geographically, how our enrollment is. When you look at Brookdale, Longwood, Brooks, and Young as the 4 most northern buildings at the elementary level, and you look at Graham, Bilta, Kendall, and Patterson and Fry, Peterson, Patterson, and Fry, our furthest south schools, that even though our enrollment has been dropping, it hasn't been dropping consistently across the district. We've got areas of the district where we're utilizing more of our buildings and areas of the district where we've got some open space. When you look at the demographic study that was completed this fall, you can see what's projected for each of those buildings with the red hash marks. So you can see that we're going to continue to climb in enrollment on the north end of the district and continue to fall for the most part, with the exception of Peterson, where there's a lot of growth going on the south end of the district. When you look at our middle schools, north to south, you can see Hill, Granger, Still, Fishers, almost exactly in the center, Gregory, Scullin, and Crone. Still, which is the building you're in now, has the most capacity. And when you look at the middle school enrollment with the future 5-year projections, you can see that Crone is projected to lose a number of students, and that's again on the south end of the district. So our challenges are on the north end of the district and look like they're going to continue to be on the north end of the district. Our capacities versus enrollment at our high schools, again from north to south, with Mattia being our northernmost school. You can see that Mattia is almost entirely gray, and that the enrollment is above that. That's because we're over capacity presently at Mattia Valley High School. What you can see with Waubonsee is we're slightly below, and with Neuqua we're slightly below. Neuqua includes both the sophomore, junior, and senior campus and the freshman campus. That's why the capacity is so much larger at Neuqua Valley High School. And when you look at what we're expected to see in the next 5 years, you can see that the north end again is an area of challenge, and we're going to lose more students on the south end of the district where Neuqua is at. So what's the overall? The overall is that we've got adequate capacity at our current class sizes. Now, if we were to do something differently with our class sizes, we would be utilizing more of all of our schools. The other thing is that we've underutilized buildings in the south and overutilized buildings in the north, and it's really pretty consistent as you go through the district how that falls out. We've got capacity challenges at Brookdale, Brooks, Peterson, and Mattia. We've got other challenges. We've got an alternative high school, which is currently being used at Indian Plains High School. It's one of our original facilities. It's in really rough shape. It will take a substantial investment to bring it back into shape, so we need to look at what are we going to do long term for those students. In addition to that, we've got a transition program called STEPS. These are students that require additional assistance beyond graduation. They're currently served in our 3 high schools, and we need to look at long term what are we going to do to support them. Indian Plains Alternative School is a school for students who have academic challenges, conduct challenges, fell behind in credits in their high school, and they go there for a credit recovery program. Some of those students have individualized education plans. So it's been a great facility and very successful, but the building is very, very old. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob Schwartz from RSP and Associates, and he'll talk a little bit about his study.
Great, thank you, Jay. Rock, chalk, Jayhawk. Come on, there's got to be some Jayhawks here. I had some friends when I was in school that were actually from Chicago. Hey, so I'm glad you're awake. I'm glad that I see a great diversity of people here tonight. I even see a baby here. So that's probably someone that's going to be potentially impacted by some of the decisions that may come from this study. So a little bit how this came about. 2011, you see behind me on this graphic the results of what we forecasted for the enrollment for the 16-17 school year. So 5 years ago when we came here, most people didn't think there was going to be a decrease in your enrollment. And when you look at some of the slides that Jay showed, you can see that you had grown quite considerably years before that. So you can see our accuracy at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. So very accurate considering the dynamic changes that have been occurring in your district. So there were 3 key things in this new study. The first being that this is a comprehensive study that looks at the enrollments, the demographics, and development opportunities, whether they're new or infill developments. And we're looking at, with all of these different opportunities, we're seeing decreases in your enrollment at the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level. A lot of this comes about from graduating classes that are going to be much larger than incoming kindergarten classes. When you graduate 2,300 seniors and you have about 1,700 kindergartners coming in, you have a lot to make up in those other grades as they cohorts. And again, as you've heard tonight, there's some different challenges with what that means for your capacity. You've heard Jay talk about the north and the south and where we have capacity, where we're seeing decline, where we have affordable housing. That's driving some of the factors that we look at for what's happening with some of the enrollment decline over the next 5 years. Some different things about what we do with getting the accuracy is we are looking at planning areas, and these planning areas are different types of development in your community. So it could be single-family homes, apartments, mobile homes, duplexes, twin homes, and we have a little over 750 of these planning areas. And we're tracking the enrollments, the demographics, and development opportunities that change over time. If we zoom in a little bit tighter to what this planning area means, what you can see on this map is a green line or a bluish looking line, which is the planning areas. You can see the parcels, you can see streets, but more importantly, you see some dots. Those are students. The larger the dot, the greater the grade. And if we zoom in just a little bit tighter, you can see this a little nicer, is each of these planning areas have yield rates that are generated based on what we're seeing with the different housing inventory. And so here we've zoomed into Prairie Elementary that you can see some of the different students in each of these households. We look at a lot of different things, produce very different maps for you to understand what's happening. If you go back to the August Board of Education meeting, you can see the full presentation that we provided. But one of the things that we try to do is provide a heat map. So this heat map, the red and orange areas are where we have the greatest density of students. If we showed what that looked like over time, you'd see as we have new developments coming online, particularly down by Peterson, there's no kids there. And then as you move forward in time, there's going to be students. We'll look at things that are happening with year builds or new activity that's happening. So again, this map's looking down here on the southwest side of your district. We want to know, what is that impact going to be? What type of household is moving in? You know, when we see the country club area, as it's had the single family and some multi-family opportunities, what type of demographics is going to move in there? Will they be similar to what we've seen in other similar type developments in your district? So there's a lot of correlation. There's a lot of data that we look at from the county, the cities, and the townships, as well as census data and other demographic data sets that we put together to, again, understand what truly has happened, what is happening, and what can we forecast will likely happen in the future. All of that gets pushed into this formula, or two different formulas. It's a statistical model. If you like math, study this a little bit. We could talk later about it. But basically what I want you to think about is where you live. If there's 5 kindergartners that live in your neighborhood, what's the likelihood over time as they become first grade, second grade, third grade, do they actually stay living in that planning area or your subdivision? If they move out, are they being replaced by someone of that similar age demographic? If they are not, how is that impacting what we see for yield rates? This is what this model really tries to do. We make different assumptions. Each of these assumptions have a different impact on each of these 750 plus planning areas. We look at what we think will happen with mortgage interest rates. We've been seeing that slightly increase. We look at what happens with foreclosures. If we go back to 2008, there were a lot of things that happened that stalled out the movement of people. We're seeing a more robust activity that's now occurring with the recirculation of homes. And is that healthy? And what does that mean for the new households that are moving in? We could talk quite a bit about millennials. They're interesting. I'm not one. I may look young. Got gray hair, so I'm definitely not. But they're coming out with some different needs. For instance, how many of you knew that on average they have a $37,000 college debt that impacts what they can afford? So the affordability factor in your community drives where they will live. It drives where we potentially may see future students. We look at things that may happen with unemployment rates, with the cost for a barrel of oil or what you pay for a gallon of gasoline. And then we also are looking at what's the likelihood as people move to this community that they may choose other options. Is that homeschool, private school, parochial school? And we forecast then what we think the optimal or ideal enrollment will be for the district, and then broken down to each of the different buildings. So we know with millennials, they'll be first-time home buyers, right? We know that the economic conditions are a little bit different. I've given you a couple facts about them. We look where infrastructure is going to be located. How does that relate to some of these infill developments? We know you're a maturing district. We do a lot of work in this area. We've done some work in SD 308. And we know as we move to your south and west part of your district, in the next few years, the city folks that we've met with have indicated that area will be done building, and we'll be waiting on some of these other vacant properties that we'll talk about here in a moment for them to develop. So the timing of when they develop is going to impact the number of students that we see. We also know that you have a slightly younger average aged households that's been slowly creeping up as you've been a maturing district. And we know that overall with your facilities, with the capacity as it's identified by the architects, overall at the district level there's adequate capacity, but as we look at different buildings, there's some stresses. So a little bit about development. We know, for instance, the Wagner Farm, if you're familiar with that location, at some point we may see it develop. And then we know that there's very limited opportunities for other residential development activity to occur. We know that over the next couple years, we'll see these areas that are developing, finish developing, and so the cities have indicated there would be between 200, 300 units over the next couple years, and then within your district, we're limited to some of these infill opportunities. So basically, the forecast is now looking at what type of demographic is moving into this district, and will they have school-age children, and will they be more like elementary, middle school, or high school? So we know we have some different challenges of how to balance the enrollment throughout the district, and how you go about doing that is the purpose of these meetings. What are the best ways that you can meet some of those challenges? And then we know that there's a declining resource that you have to be able to address some of these challenges. And then we're hoping that this will develop a long-term plan so that you don't have to go through this every couple years, that will set the course, that we minimize disruptions to the students, the teachers, and ultimately create some college and career successful students. I don't know, Jay, if there's anything more you want to follow up on?
My only other point is that in addition to our overall capacity needs and our changing enrollment, we've got some special populations, our transition program, our alternative high school, that we need to consider long range, what's the best way to handle that situation. And with that, I'll turn it over to the facilitating team to start the next phase of the process.